recording this. Two big categories of cells are prokaryote and eukaryote. And prokaryotic cells are really, really simple. So, first of all, let's say all living things are made of cells, right? We talked about that in the very beginning of the year. But there are two major classes of cells. There are the prokaryotic cells and the eukaryotic cells. So prokaryotic cells have a membrane that surrounds them. And that membrane is just the outer, it's like the bag. If you imagine the cell as a Ziploc bag, that membrane just keeps things, it controls what comes in and out of the cell. Okay? It's a barrier between the outside world and the cell. Inside the Ziploc bag, so the only thing that's inside that prokaryotic cell is just a little loop of DNA. So all of its DNA is sort of gathered up into a circle, and there it sits. I mean, there's cytoplasm, like I said, there's juice, but there's nothing else. That's it. No nucleus, no organelles, no nothing. Eukaryotic cells, on the other hand. Okay, so in eukaryotic cells, and there are two distinct types of eukaryotic cells, which we'll talk about a little bit more. They have a membrane. All cells have to have something that forms a boundary, that keeps what's inside and what's outside. So they have a cell membrane as well. But those eukaryotic cells have more than just a single loop of DNA. They've got actual structures. They have a structure that's called a nucleus. And I'm trying to give the impression that this is three-dimensional. It's not going so well. But no matter what kind of eukaryotic cell we have a nucleus. And that nucleus sort of runs the cell. It contains all the directions for the cell, all the tasks it has to accomplish. Inside that cell, we still have pieces of DNA. Okay? So the DNA is kept inside the nucleus. Okay, so these eukaryotic cells have got a whole bunch of stuff in them. They've got all these things, all these little organelles is what they're called. And you've probably heard that term before. You do some life science in 7th grade? Okay. Those ribosomes are sort of peppered throughout the cell. The endoplasmic reticulum are these big, long, sheety things. The lysosomes are sort of like little storage pouches. Golgi bodies are more sort of big sheets of stuff. And then mitochondria are little tiny structures, and we're going to talk more about them as we go. You can see that a eukaryote cell is a lot more complicated than a prokaryote cell. That's obvious right off. What kind of living things, and we talked about this a little bit with evolution, what kind of living things are prokaryotes? Those are all eukaryotes. There's only one kind of living thing, broad category of living thing, that's a prokaryote, bacteria. So these guys are the bacteria. Everything else is a eukaryote, huh? Well, there are many, many, many different species and types of bacteria, but they all have in common that they have no organelles, they just have a membrane and a loop of DNA. But within that, they have different kinds of coatings, different shapes, so there are differences. That's a good question, though. Okay, so eukaryotes, then, are everything else. Would you believe me? Of course you would, probably. If I told you that there are two kinds of eukaryotes, and we've kind of hinted at it here. And I think this will finish the hint. Yep. There are plant cells and animals when we talk about generalized eukaryote cells. So we have plant. I'm going to get rid of this. And animal. And for many of the structures are the same. Okay? Many of the structures are the same. The big differences between plant and animal. So in the plant cell, what I drew as that green, the plant cell has this structure on the outside that's a cell wall. Plant cells do not, or animal cells don't have cell walls. Your cells don't have cell walls. They're squishier than that. They're more like that Ziploc bag. If you imagine reinforcing that Ziploc bag with cardboard, that's a cell wall. And so plant cells do have cell walls. Animal cells don't. The other things that plant cells have that animal cells don't, any of you able to perform photosynthesis to get your lunch? No. No animal can. There are little structures inside animals or plant cells that allow them to perform photosynthesis. And those are called, okay, and the one other structure that plant cells have that animals don't, they're chloroplasts. Okay, and chlorophyll, this is where photosynthesis occurs. Okay, so there's one other structure I didn't mention yet that some animal cells have. And I'm going to draw these on. What does that look like? These little things I just drew right here. Looks like hair or eyelashes. These are called cilia. Okay, we'll pick it up tomorrow.